The life of a Roman slave will certainly not be a pleasant one to look at. The kind of atrocities they may be put in is something that a lot of us couldn't even imagine. The huge number of slaves in the possession of those with the power made them even more powerful. They could now make them do work that includes their personal agendas. This certainly was not good news for those who were captured as slaves. Life, therefore, could have turned meaningless, and a huge number of people, therefore, either commit suicide trying to flee away from their destiny or end up getting killed for going against the rule of their owners. Welcome back to another video of Binge History. In this video, we will be talking about the life of a Roman slave. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and also let us know in the comments section about what kind of video you will want us to cover. Without further ado, let us get into their lives from their perspective. Let us assume that a person, say Jacob, is present back in those days and was a Roman slave, and therefore did not have the greatest of lucks back then. Life for Jacob could have been full of daily threats. These threats could involve harm to themselves or one of their closest relatives, say wife or children. Therefore, his life was full of constant pressures of not being able to perform. If he shows any indication of not working, he would face the threat of putting in danger not only his life, but of the closest ones to him. His life would certainly be filled with innumerable sessions of whipping and brutality. It is important to know that he was not the only one being treated in this manner. There is a whole community of Roman slaves, which, as a matter of fact, was equal to the number of free people in the state. So, this means that the total population of the community was divided among two roughly equal halves, where one half was formed just out of slaves. The chance for them to make a living was therefore dependent on the fact that they complete the tasks assigned to them in the best possible manner on the basis of the instructions given by their masters. The profession that Jacob often notices their fellow mates being enslaved to varies greatly on demand. They could be used up as gladiators, mine workers, prostitutes, potters, and a lot more. This life was therefore filled with constant targets and achievements in terms of money that they had to reach out to. The fact that whether they get paid or not is still a mystery that we will be answering in this video. The life of a Roman depends a lot on the skills a particular Roman has. He could be a teacher or a physician or, on the other hand, could also have a very miserable life as a prostitute. The life of the more miserable ones is what we will be covering in this video. Their nights are normally spent on a bed made out of grass straws and a blanket to protect them from the extreme cold. The cold could be a bigger element of atrocity than anything else that they were inflicted upon with. Now, one thing that was not at all questioned was the fact that the attractive girls had to be with their masters and had to submit to the desire of their masters. For them, fate is pretty defined, which was to act in accordance to the sexual desires of the master. This was not the only challenge that these young girls had to face. The wives of these masters often used to blame the girls for sleeping with their husbands. There were a lot of atrocities coming in from their side for this particular reason. Now, as far as our character Jacob is concerned, he was aware and had witnessed a lot of young girls being beaten up by the master's wives due to such reason. There was not a lot they could do to establish their rights and grounds. All they could do was steal food and live in the most submissive conditions, making the life of a human comparable to that of an object. The life being led by the Roman slaves was a lot dependent on the whims and fancies of the master. As was the case of Jacob, the master allowed Jacob to marry the girl he wanted to marry. However, the master may also not allow the slaves to marry at all. Jacob, after he got married, was blessed with a child. However, he knew that there were high chances that the children being born out of such wedlock became the properties of the master, which can then be sold on by him to make further profits. As he doubted, his children were then sold for higher bids as he had no rights over his own children. The life, therefore, was comparable to that of an animal under the control of a caretaker or their master. Our fictional character Jacob then led us to explore the possibilities of being appointed to the higher posts of works. As we mentioned earlier, this was reserved for those who had the relevant skill sets. It was in the 5th century AD that the law code of Theodosius came in and stated that if the slaves were separated from their families, they had to be reunited and placed with one owner. The law accepted the quality of life that was being reserved for Jacob. In search of independent life, Jacob started showcasing his skills and tried to get higher positions like that of the managers. This could help them lead an independent life and make their lives a bit more meaningful. Speaking of the good positions, the Roman slaves had another enemy to deal with. These were the Greek slaves. The reason here was that Greeks, being more educated and skilled, often fetched all the teacher and physician jobs that had a higher quality of life. As time passed, the Romans started trusting the Greeks more for such kinds of work for their expertise and skills. Of all the kinds of lives that people had to live back then, prostitutes had a really hard time. Even then, prostitution was a common job for them to do back then. The working and living conditions were close to a nightmare. The only hope they had back then was to make sure a wealthy customer came and fell in love with them. If this happens, they will be set free and will be able to lead a better life in the times ahead. We have learned a great deal about the life of a Roman slave doing various odd jobs. Now, let us look at a comparatively better kind of job which we have nowadays. As a matter of fact, even though being a farmer is regarded relatively highly in the present days, this is not the case when it comes to the era back then. Agriculture, mining, and quarries were the worst type of all the slaveries that a person could be entitled to. The reason for this was the fact that these workers were kept in chains and prisons and worked till death. The sole objective that these workers were supposed to have, according to them, was to work till they could no more. It would also be interesting to note that not keeping their slaves in chains was considered to be a matter of pride. The situation for them was, therefore, too harsh for healthy existence. As this happened, a lot of slaves started getting rebellious. This led to a revolt, and hence, the army expanded to over 70,000 to 120,000 people in it. Now, let us have a look at the punishments that a slave could have. It was not a new thing for the master to kill his slaves. The master could even have expert crucifixion teams for their slaves. Their bodies were left for the vultures and dogs to feed for a while before being taken away. This was done to inflict fear. Furthermore, a slave could also be burned alive and fed to the lions. This was considered to be the better form of death and less pain-inflicting than the others on the list. As you noticed, the life of Roman slaves was not at all the kind of life any person would want to have. Life was therefore filled with a lot of sorrow at all points in time. The presence of rights for them was a myth, since they were considered property under Roman law and had no legal personhood. Most slaves would never be freed. Unlike Roman citizens, they could be subjected to corporal punishment, sexual exploitation, torture, and summary execution. They were not allowed to have access to the basic necessities that could help them survive at the very least. And this was the video that we have for you today. If you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification so you won't miss out on our latest videos. Let us know in the comments section about what you feel the Roman slaves might have also been exposed to back then. Thank you for watching Binge History. We will see you next time. Bye!